Oh, Arielle, we did lost Arielle. Good evening, everybody. Ah, there she is. Hey, this is Kathy from Lair Books coming to bring you our very first virtual event with Chasten and Arielle. We're so excited to talk about I Have Something to Tell You. But before we get to that, what we're going to do is I'm going to read to you our code of conduct, and then we're going to talk about how this program would run tonight. This code of conduct pertains to all of our events at Lair Books, the Lair bookstore, and any of our affiliates. We aim to build a stronger community centered around the discussion of inclusive literature. Our goal is to create an environment where traditionally marginalized voices feel welcome to participate, speak up, ask questions, and engage in conversation. This requires a harassment-free and inclusive environment that recognizes the inherent worth of every participant. We invite all those who participate to help us create safe and positive experiences for everyone. All attendees, speakers, sponsors, and volunteers at Lair LLC event are required to agree with the following code of conduct. This code of conduct outlines our expectations for participant behavior as well as for consequences for unacceptable behavior. During this event, no speaker, attendee, staff member, sponsor, or volunteer should engage in any harassment in any form. Participants engaging in harassing behavior will be removed immediately and banned from current and successive events. We will post a complete code of conduct later, but no, if you act up, you're out. We're watching you, no worries. All right. So we have Chasten and we have Arielle here tonight. I'm so excited. I can't tell you. Chasten is super funny. His book was amazing. And they're going to talk about that. But let me tell you a little bit about him. Chasten was born and raised in Traverse City, Michigan. He's a thespian, two-time 4-H Blue Ribboner, and decorated member of the high school bowling team. That is some honors right there, let me tell you. All right. He received his bachelor's degree from the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. It's a master's in education from DePaul University. But that's two things Chasten and I have in common. We both have education degrees. We both worked at Starbucks. Yeah, it's kind of amazing. Here in town, I worked at Starbucks when I was thinking about opening a bookstore because I thought I wanted a coffee shop. But no, too much work.
I love it.
I worked as a busboy, a dog walker, a nursing assistant, a waiter, a cashier, a bartender, and most recently, a middle school drama and humanities teacher. He lives here in South Indiana with his husband's dogs. I Have Something to Tell You is his first and wonderful book. In conversation with Chasten tonight, we have my good friend, Arielle Brandy. So excited to see her face today. Arielle was most recently the Indiana State Director for the Peak for America campaign. For 3 years, Arielle served as a Democratic board member of voter registration for St. Joseph County, and she co-founded the St. Joseph County African American and Democratic Coalition. Alongside her membership, she continues to advocate for issues that affect the Black and Brown community through community forums and initiatives. She served on the HWAF board, helping women across the state of Indiana get elected into office, hold leadership positions, find their purpose, and have a seat at every table. Welcome, UT. You too. I'm going to step out and let you guys talk.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
I love Kathy.
So much. I know, she's the best. And Lair is literally a gem in South Bend. And when things get back to normal and you guys can go and visit, you definitely should.
Yeah.
I had Madison's 10th birthday party at the Lair. Yes, we did a book birthday party and it was phenomenal.
That's great.
Well, Chasten, I'm so happy that you're here with me. I haven't seen you since February.
Ooh.
It's been a long time, it feels like. But in between that time, you've done a thing. You wrote a book.
Yeah. Unreal.
You wrote a book, and I remember when we were in the car in South Carolina, and you were like, "This is gonna go in my book." And I was like, I can't wait to read this book whenever it comes out. But I'm excited to be here. But we have a big announcement. You just made the New York Times bestseller list.
Yeah.
I just want to say congratulations, my friend. I am so happy for you.
Thank you.
For that is a huge accomplishment.
Yeah. I didn't think it was going to happen. I try not to be a pessimist, but everyone's writing about Trump right now. There's like half the New York Times list is Trump books. So I was like, it's going to be a tough week. It's okay. I was really proud of this story, and now I don't know, I'm just blown away. I can't believe it. It's really cool.
I know. I'm blown away for you. When I saw your Instagram post, I was in the car and I let out a little scream because a lot of people don't realize, for folks that are from South Bend, or even yourself being from Michigan and just being what we consider normal people who are stepping into politics, writing a book and then it actually being very successful is a very huge deal. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Very happy for you. So my first question for you is, how does it feel to actually have a book out there that is about you and your life? Like right off the bat, how are you feeling about putting yourself out there to the world to be able to see that? And they like it so much. It's now, a top book. How do you feel?
Well, when I was approached to write the book, I first said, I don't think I can do that. I don't think I can write a book. They said you should really write a memoir. I said, I can't write a memoir. 31 years old. It doesn't make sense to me. Maybe I could write some essays. I'm just really confused about how my story was supposed to be worthy enough of a book. And then it was really the campaign trail that convinced me I needed to write the book, and started working on it out on the trail. When you're meeting with people and looking them in the eye and sharing your most deepest vulnerabilities and your fears. And then the way I chose to write the book, I wanted it to be very conversational, but I also wanted it to be very vulnerable and open for other people. And I was very nervous that some people wouldn't like that style, that maybe some folks wouldn't get it, because I want people to feel like they're sitting across from me. I want them to feel like we're getting a drink, grabbing a cup of coffee, and I'm like, okay, here's the tea, here's the whole thing. And I was very intimidated by the process of writing, a political memoir. I feel like people in politics don't write books like this. And now that it's out there and, people picked it up and they liked it, one, touched that they would buy it. And then two, thank God they liked it. It's incredible. I really never imagined being here in my life. And I've been pinching myself a lot today. Oh no, Arielle, I can't hear you.
Oh, there I am.
Boom.
You can hear me now?
Yes.
All right, perfect. No, I was going to say your book encompasses so much, and it reminds me a lot of what we built during the campaign. You have pretty much built this book with sharing the power of your story, which was exactly the kind of momentum that we created across this country. And so you being able to share your story, love and relationships, growing pains through family and your teenage years and coming out, campaigning and politics, college, the debt that comes with it, and career changes, and most importantly, discovering yourself and being authentically you. And that was one of the things that struck me so much about this, is that you put yourself in this vulnerable space to create this beautiful memoir. Sharing your story and talking about yourself and pieces of yourself that people probably never knew. But I want to dive straight into the book and talk about one, your family, because I had the privilege of being able to meet your mom and your dad, and spent a week with you guys in South Carolina and in multiple places throughout the country. Been able to get to know them. And, one of the great things that I loved is that, one, your family's from Michigan. My mom's from Michigan. Oh. So I related so much to your story because I know about getting lost in rural Michigan, and having to navigate your way. But, in your book, you talk about, one, a lot of the things that you learned from your father. And, in Not That Kind of Camp, your first chapter, straight out the gate, you talk about all of the ways in which your father pranked you, the ways in which you had to learn how to navigate, life as a young person. How do you feel like your family dynamics growing up helped shape you coming into politics and self-discovery?
Yeah, I feel like when when folks maybe get a brief overview, or maybe they hear secondhand of what my story was, there's this tendency to say, like, so you ran away from home, terrible place to be, conservative Northern Michigan. The thing is, I ran away from home because I was convinced I couldn't be gay in the environment I grew up in. But that's not to say my childhood was a waste. My parents instilled so many life lessons in all of their boys. My dad, as an extremely hard worker, he still won't give up. He's broken his back multiple times, and he taught us from a very young age, the value of a hard worked hour and an earned dollar. And my mother was so loving and loud and welcoming and would do anything for anyone. And I learned all of these skills about, taking care of myself, advocating for myself, giving to others, loving others. But, it was also the environment that I was growing up in, living in, in secrecy. Because then there was also the fact that nobody knew what it was like to be gay. Nobody knew what it was like to be out. And I know we'll probably talk about that in a little bit, but that's not to say I ran away from something that was, destructive. I just wish sometimes I could bottle my parents up and sort of spread them around the country, because they are truly, emblematic of when people trust love to be the thing that binds you together. That when I came back home, it was my parents' love for me that rebuilt that bridge, that they asked the hard questions, they showed up, they did the work, they wanted to get it right because they loved their son. And all of the other lessons that they taught me as a young kid, reinforced why I think I am the person I am today, and why I went home, why they welcomed me home, because of that environment of love. I don't know if my dad is watching tonight. I know he's waiting to come over here afterwards to help fix the furnace, but he was such a prankster growing up. He didn't like see if I could fly from the nest. He just like kicked me out of the nest and was just like, go fly. He taught me the hard way. I love them both dearly.
Yeah, no, they definitely did. And I think one of the things too is that, growing up in Michigan, one, knowing my mom and how she grew up and the things that she was exposed to, there was a part of your book when we go into your journey through 4-H, which was so cool to learn about you, more in depth than what I did, like surface level, to learn about you walking your steers and how serious you were about 4-H, was something that I was like, this is really cool. But at the end of the chapter, you touch on a really great thing, because, you talk about growing up in, a rural area around Confederate narratives, and you navigating through that, because this is what you saw, this is what you grew up around, and you thought that that was how you had to kind of conform to and navigate your way. So how do you feel, or what's your advice to people who, are around these types of environments and they're trying to figure out how they shift their own view of politics or their own view of thinking when this is all that you're around?
Yeah, I mean, I count myself as one of the lucky ones that got to, I ran away in high school. I got a scholarship. I got to study in Germany. I was the first person in my family to complete college. I got to go to college. I've been to grad school. I've lived in bigger cities. I got out of the bubble.
Yep.
And some people have been sitting in this bubble, going about their lives for decades, never having to question the world outside of it. And when you're growing up in a place like Northern Michigan that is, 99 point whatever % white, our systems are structured for white people to never have to examine a wider world. They never have to examine structures of whiteness. They never have to think about race. And for that matter, many people here really never have to think about the idea of equality. And when I was growing up, as I wrote in the book, I was swimming in a sea of whiteness. And even then, to be perfectly honest, as I was in the book, I didn't know what that was. I didn't even know what whiteness was because I was in it. And no one ever asked me to turn around and look at it. And so when, kids were flying the Confederate flag in their pickup trucks or wearing it to school on their belt buckles, there was never a conversation school-wide about how that is a racist symbol. It was always a joke, like, why are you wearing the Confederate flag? Michigan was in the Union. there was never a conversation about what that symbol might send to other people, and how destructive it can be when you embrace that type of culture and those types of racist symbols. And so I've come back, I always come back to my hometown. I refuse to give up on my hometown. I love my hometown, but I've also been back here and I've had to have the conversations with people who have never, ever had their bubble popped.
Yeah.
Who have, you have to have the conversations with people in your own community who say, I just don't understand why we can't say all lives matter, because don't they? Because in their mind, they're living in this sort of perfect place where, everyone belongs. And so of course all lives matter. And they've never really had to consider that other people's lives are at stake differently than theirs in this country. And they've never truly had to see or examine or read about other people being, shot, killed, murdered in this country simply for the color of their skin. And part of that is having really tough conversations. And I know, because we've been in the belly of the beast in politics together in South Bend, that sometimes it's those hard conversations that really turn people around, but you have to come to them, I think, wholeheartedly and honestly with the goal in mind of bringing people to the right side of history. Because as we saw on the campaign trail, if I were to, same thing on the campaign trail, if I were to come home and say, like, you're terrible, you're not as progressive as you should be, like, how dare you, how have you never examined the world, you're ignorant, that just pushes people into the lives of, people like Donald Trump. And I didn't even understand sort of some of those systems and bubbles that I was growing up in until I left them, and now what do when you turn around, you grow up, you look back on your life, places where maybe you got it wrong, you didn't get it right, or things that you didn't know. And what do you do with that platform and that knowledge?
Absolutely. And I think one of the things too, you talk about the importance of having these hard conversations, and coming from a place of one, love, and also just a place of understanding. So let's talk about one of the hard conversations you had to have when you, journeyed through Germany and had your first kiss.
Yeah.
And, came back home and decided to have the conversation with your parents about coming out. And being able to have those hard and tough conversations with your family, which we know a large proportion of the LGBTQ community do not have those spaces to be able to have those conversations. They sometimes, especially in rural areas, we know, try not to get too deep into the policy, but we know in rural areas of the country, it's an issue where a lot of these folks do not have those spaces to be able to do that. So let's talk about when I want to talk about the, belonging, but also what it's like to build those safe spaces from your perspective of being able to be a person who experienced a space to be able to do that. What is something that you could give to the folks that are viewing with us? What does a safe space look like? And what do folks who are allies and even, folks who are within the LGBTQ community, what do we need to be doing better to build these safe spaces so that queer kids across the country can share their stories like you?
You just gave me like the whole arc of that chapter. It was beautiful. So I ran out to Germany and I wrote in the book, it wasn't that I had the courage to kiss a boy. It was that Germany allowed me to drink enough alcohol where I had the courage to kiss a boy, and it changed my life. It's like, oh my God, this thing I've been so terrified of. I was on cloud nine, and I, was finally able to open up to a friend that I made there. I was having these feelings, and it was the first time in my life that someone ever looked at me and said, maybe you're just gay. Like it was something that you could just be, because where I grew up, I mean, think of every word possible that someone could use to hurt or belittle a queer person. I'd been called it. And everything I was learning, in church or in 4-H, or hearing, people in my own family who at the time didn't know better say about gay people just told me I was twisted, I was broken, something inside of me was wrong. But I found that courage to embrace that and came home. And again, my parents didn't kick me out. I ran as fast as I could because I was convinced I would embarrass them, and I would be a disgrace. And then, fast forward, mom calls me home a couple months later and she has none of the answers. All she knows is she doesn't want her baby sleeping on people's couches and in his car. And I come home and mom says, I'm terrified for you. Life is going to be so much harder for you. And that was a huge risk on her part, because I know my parents would never tell me, but I know they probably lost friendships, or friendships were dampened, or it was very hard to talk to their friends about it because my parents were willing to show up for their son, but other people weren't.
Yeah.
And mom and dad had to ask really uncomfortable questions because they didn't want to hurt me, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do I say this? What do I say? What happens when but we both came to the table knowing that we loved one another. And I don't think I ever shared my mental health journey with my parents, but I think they knew that I was in a really dark place. And I guess the message I have for people watching, people who want to be allies, is the thing that saved my life was having people in my life look me in the eye and say, you have worth. Your life has worth. And I love you. And I'll fight like hell for you. Having friends, because we all, I think, go about our friendships. Maybe it's like a Midwestern, like Catholic guilt thing, but like everything stays locked up in here, right? We don't talk about anything. And we, of course, like show up for our friends. We love our friends, but we like don't actually talk about our feelings. Mm-hmm. And to have a friend say, no, I'm not joking. If you ever need space, you have space. If you ever need a shoulder, my shoulder is yours. If you ever need to call in the middle of the night, I'll get on the phone with you. And my parents saying, this is your home. This will always be your home and will always be your parents. My dad stopping me one day on my way out the door saying, I just want to let you know, I love you. I love that you're my son. The power that has when you are walking through the mud and thinking that everything is going to come crashing down and tear your life apart. And so it wasn't necessarily about, as you read in the book, just like flinging open the closet doors, being like, here I am. It was like, shit, here I am, please don't kill me. That's literally what I was going through. And I had other people saying, no, I got you. I've got your back. And that it saved my life. And I think if you truly want to be someone's ally, you have to give them permission to take up space. And you have to remind them that they're worthy of it.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think that was one of the most beautiful parts of the campaign, is that, one, we got to hear so many stories. You got to be a person that were meeting kids, adults all across the country that were coming to you and coming out to you. And you were their safe space. And we were able to meet with so many people, sit at so many roundtable discussions, and you talk about all of the different centers that you got to visit, all of the different people that you were able to touch and impact. And so for those folks that are watching that, are dedicated to this work and really want to be true allies and supportive of the LGBTQ community, like, your time is now. This book is the perfect representation of how to be and take it all in. Aside from family and coming out, you also, like myself, went to college, had no idea what to expect, didn't know what you wanted to study. You kind of knew, had an idea that you had a passion for something, but along the way, you had some odd jobs, and you talk about all of that. We have Whisper Lady from Starbucks.
Oh,
which she's become something on Twitter. I don't know if you saw it. People have been talking about Whisper Lady on Twitter.
No.
From Starbucks. Yes, I saw a tweet the other day.
I mean, she was always sweet, but there's this, if you haven't read the book yet, we really get into working at Starbucks and the entitlement that people bring into that building. And Whisper Lady was like, I just want a whisper of nutmeg. And everyone's like, what the hell does that mean? Is that a lot? Is that a little? Is it like a flourish? And then sometimes she'd take it over the bar and like add more. She was never rude about it, but there's like 50 people in line and everyone's angry at you. And it's like very rare for people to come and be like, good morning. Like they haven't had coffee yet, right? They all hate you until they get your coffee. So I'm glad she's a thing, but I hope if she reads the book and she figures out at her. I mean no malice, just more direction would be helpful.
Yes, I do also think that for folks that are trying to find their passion, trying to find their niche in life, you went through a very interesting journey of one battling through, college on your own, trying to figure out, do you go to community college, do you do it at university, and also racking up college debt like I myself have done as a first gen college student. But even though you took these different jobs to try to get to your pathway of being in the classroom and doing theater, how do you think that all of those things shaped you to actually getting to your passion, which I think is really important, because there are a lot of folks out there right now who are either unemployed or they're going paycheck to paycheck to try to figure it out and to get to their passion. So how have those things shaped you to get to where, you found your love of education and theater?
Yeah, we were talking about Dad earlier, and I think he taught me a lot about grit and perseverance. And I mean, maybe you feel the same way. I think the American dream in college is a lie. For many people, I grew up and everyone said, if you want to get out of here and you're not like on a football scholarship, you have to go to college. And you go to college for 4 years, get a bachelor's degree, everything's going to be fine. And I had no idea how to do that. And I was also embarrassed to tell my family I didn't know how to do that, because I was convinced I would prove to them that I could, and that I was good enough to do it. And so, you go to financial aid, you go to these universities and you say, I need money. And they're like, cool, here, sign on the line. Here's money. Good luck. No one's holding your hand saying like, let's make a plan. Let's make a spreadsheet. We'll get to Pete Buttigieg later. Let's think about how we can manage that. I didn't have any of that. And here I am trying to figure out, like, am I supposed to be a nurse? I feel like everyone keeps saying that's a really good field to go into. And, I'm trying out these nursing assistant jobs, and I eventually decide, like, I just need to finish school and I need to get out of here. And theater is the only place that makes me feel alive and safe. And so I just finished my bachelor's in theater and global studies. And my first job out of college was being a teaching assistant at a theater academy. And it's like doors opened wide for me, that I was in this space. I felt like I knew what I was doing. The kids loved coming into my classroom. They loved, having fun in our classroom. And, I feel like many times the theater is a safe space for other queer kids. And I could see that, our center was a safe space as well. And I really got to feel like I was showing up for other kids, any kid who just felt like they didn't belong, whether they were LGBTQ plus or not. And then I realized, like, this is what I need to be doing, and started climbing the ladder from there. But yeah, when I was bartending and like working at Eddie Bauer and like just trying to figure out like how to make enough money so I could get gas in my car and, dollar menu food in my belly just to like make it by day. And I would like to think my dad taught me about that perseverance, but I don't know. It was just the sense that I wanted to know what good felt like. I wanted to know what it felt like to, wake up and be happy.
Yeah. And that's so relatable. And I completely agree with you, as being a first gen student who has racked up the debt. And, like you and I both, when we got to college, we both realized how much of the day-to-day things that we were experiencing had relation to policy. So, and it wasn't until, you're in those lived situations and you're seeing that you kind of realize how you want to do more. So I think that was probably our moment where we were like, all right, maybe this was our magic ball into politics. But it so much also shapes a lot of the things that we were able to talk about on the campaign trail too, because you were able to share and be very vulnerable about, your pathway through college and student debt and how that impacts so many students. And so one of the other less not so serious things I want to ask you, because this comes out in chapter 5, which is totally unrelatable to anything policy, but you have some tattoos.
Oh yeah, I do.
And a lot of folks probably didn't know that unless they were like, super, super fans. But you talk about your tattoos a little bit. And I just want to ask a less serious question. Do you plan on getting any more? And if so, do you have any like meaning behind them if you do plan on getting any?
So I got the one on my leg for my mom. I got the infinity symbol. I got that when I was 18, when she was diagnosed with cancer. That hit me pretty hard, and I felt like that was something I wanted to do. And then felt a little guilty that I had one for mom and not for dad. And I don't want to give everything away that's in the book, so I got the other tattoo for dad.
Yep.
I don't know. It's been like what, 10 years since I've
gotten one
a tattoo. Although here's a cute story that's not in the book. One of the tattoos. Okay, so the one on my arm I got from my dad, and it was like fading, and some of the lines weren't that great. And so I made an appointment at the tattoo parlor there next to Fiddler's.
Yeah, bicycle. Is it bicycle?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the guy's name there? I feel like I always mess up. Is it Half Pint or?
Yeah, something like that. It's
okay, so
yeah.
Super sweet guy, and I make an appointment just to have it touched up. I'm derailing your conversation. I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine. This is the fun part.
I just want to like, clean it up and make it look nice and redo the color. And so I make an appointment, and I'm on the way out the door, and Pete's like, "What are you doing again today?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm just going on the bicycle to have my tattoo redone." And he was like, "Oh, okay. Like, I'll see you later." And then I'm like in the chair. The guy's like going at the tattoo. He just starts. And like in walks Pete. And I was like, "What are you doing?" And he like comes over to the chair, and he's like, "I just didn't want you to be in pain alone." Right?
Wow.
I know.
Do you remember the last time you made me cry on stage when you shared a story about you and Pete?
I was so,
people, I'm crying.
I was so taken aback. It's like, oh my, this dude is.
Oh yeah. Top notch.
He's so great. Okay, anywho, what were we talking about?
No, but this, I mean, that right there is one, it's so beautiful to be able to see your guys' relationship, because I feel like I've had like a front row seat because I'm from South Bend. I've known you guys since you were dating, and you were just showing up, and people were like, "Who is this man?" And
creepy
like,
man.
"Oh, it's Chasten." And so, in your book, you give a little bit of a glimpse of your dating and relationships. And I feel like that part was probably one of my favorite parts, because I too have struggled with dating and being in politics and trying to like figure it all out. Yeah. Dating is like not fun. It can be, but relationships have become a little bit more complicated than what they were. And you were very vulnerable in talking about the things that you faced. And some of them are some of the same things that I myself have faced in relationships. And so one, I want to thank you for putting that out there and being able to share your story, because I think for people who are survivors and who are, trying to figure out dating and love, your book kind of transitions into, meeting somebody who makes it feel worthwhile to be loved again, in a good way. So I want to talk about, your first time meeting Pete and coming to South Bend, because, it's where I'm from. I love to hear outsiders' perspectives, but without giving too much away, what was that first interaction like with Pete and coming to our city?
Yeah, I'm glad that you touched on something in the book. I think it's really important that we be vulnerable if we can be vulnerable. So I talk about sexual assault in the book, and go down that trail of just what coming to terms with my sexuality was, my identity, and then figuring out what love and intimacy was like. I'm sorry, by the way, that's a connection to your story. But we have to do things in order to help other people feel less alone. And I feel like oftentimes people don't share those vulnerabilities because we have all grown up in a society that tells us that when someone does that to us, it makes us weaker. And that happened very early on in my journey. And it shattered me, that I didn't know what love was like, and I didn't know what intimacy was supposed to be like. Mm-hmm. And then someone took advantage of me. And then you get to read about all the other ups and downs in the book, you know, the bad dates and, you know, the boyfriend who breaks up with you after 3 years via text message. It's all in there. And when I got, you know, when I found Pete, I came to South Bend. We went on a first date to Fiddler's. We had the Scotch eggs. We went to see the South Bend Cubs play baseball. We walked along the river lights that he was so proud to show me. You know, the downtown developments and sort of geeking out about what he was doing in the city and his hopes and dreams for the city. And by the time we got back to my car, there were fireworks going off at the baseball stadium downtown. So there were literally fireworks. And, you know, I leaned in for a kiss and it was beautiful. I had never been on a date like that before. And I kept coming back, and we would walk around the lakes at Notre Dame, and we would get coffee, you know, and walk around. I mean, just, I wanted to talk to him all the time.
Yeah.
And very early on in the relationship, I opened up to him about some of those things. And I said, you know, I got to be honest, I feel a little broken. You know, this is where I'm at in my life. I know that you're at a very different place in your life. And if that's not something you're interested in, I get it. You know, I'm a broke ass college kid. Like, I was renting out my flat on Airbnb and bartending at a comedy club and starting grad school, you know, and I felt so broken. I just felt like I was presenting a life to someone that felt so incomplete when his seemed so polished.
Yeah.
And the way he just like took a wrecking ball to that wall that I like built up between my heart and the rest of the world. Just like, no, I see you. I see all the good in you. And what those people did to you in the past doesn't define you. You know, maybe it shaped you into who you are, but that does not define you. And so I kept coming back to South Bend. And then, of course, I'm guessing you're going to transition into the politics. But, you know, coming back to South Bend also meant going to rubber chicken dinners at like VFW halls and,
oh yeah,
you know, getting used to people stopping us at Chicory Cafe downtown and, you know, also taking on this other role that I wasn't expecting. But he made me feel so good and loved that it was worth sort of discovering a new world in order to be in his.
Absolutely. And I think it's one important, because I think for folks out there that are listening that are trying to navigate dating and relationships and, you know, trying to find, you know, that one person or that person that makes you feel safe, being able to see your transition through the beginning of the book as we get into the meat and bones of, you know, being and dating the mayor.
Yeah.
It became, you know, I like to say the love story of America, because we were able to share something that in the state of Indiana, you know, we had RFRA. And that,
don't I know?
And that, you know, we had to deal with, unfortunately, you know, like we always say, we apologize for Mike Pence, somehow came out of Indiana. But you guys were the good part that came out of the Indiana. You guys were able to share that with the country. But you walked into politics, you know, dating the mayor, and being somebody who may not be from this area, but also coming into these political spaces. I'm sure it was a journey for you. But even despite some of the more rocky parts, what were some of the most exciting parts about, you know, being with the mayor, being in some of these political spaces? Because I know there are some good parts that come out of it too. So, yeah. You know, what are some of the fun parts that you enjoyed about, you know, dating Mayor Pete at that time?
Oh yeah, I was really struck because we've talked about a lot of the things that have influenced us, you know, student debt, medical debt, the country that we've grown up in. And I, growing up, experiencing many of those things, formed an opinion about who politicians were, and sort of wrote politicians off. Like, they don't care about us. They don't care about my family. They don't care about my family in Northern Michigan. They don't care that my mom is, you know, going to Walgreens and getting denied a prescription because it's $13,000, right? They don't know what it's like to live these lives. And then I met a politician. And I met someone who, you know, I'm the theater kid. I'm loud. I love children. I would say, you know, very outgoing. And then I meet this person who really is an introvert, but then see the way he interacts with other people, the way he like draws people into a conversation and somehow makes everyone feel like they are the most important person in the world standing in front of him. And I saw that reflected at Mayor's Night Out. So I would go to these Mayor's Night Out events where Pete would invite, all the city, the whole city administration, right? Someone from every department is there. Everyone's got a card table in a school gymnasium. You can come talk to any department, but most people just come to talk to the mayor. And you get 5 minutes with the mayor. You sign up when you check in, first come, first serve. There's like punch and cookies in the back, and like everyone gets 5 minutes. And usually like all the other departments go home and we're still there. And he meets with every single person. And I would watch how these people would either, just want a hug and a picture and to feel seen, or people would come in and wouldn't even sit down, and like, we're very worried as a person about to get aggressive because they've got a lot of choice words for him about a certain thing, and how he handled all of it with such grace, with just this genuineness, like he wanted to help. And I slowly started to realize that when people got to know who I was, that I had an opportunity to help as well. And so I would always come to Mayor's Night Out, half to support him, half for the cookies, not gonna lie. And then, people would come over to me and say like, I want to talk to you about like the relief program, or like, I want to talk to you about the recycling bins. Why are we moving under the front curb? Or like my daughter's school is doing, X, Y, and Z. And like I write in the book, I slowly started to realize like I am an ambassador of this administration. I have no like formal role, but everything I do and say is reflective of Peter. But I could use that platform for good. I could help people feel better about their city. And oftentimes it was as simple as saying like, oh yeah, call 311 and then like take care of that tomorrow. And like people didn't realize that, but they needed someone to treat them with respect and to make them feel like their opinions and their worries mattered. And so while I'm falling in love with this guy, I'm also realizing like, oh, I, can do some good in another way that I hadn't expected.
Yeah. And I think that whole situation kind of prepared you for the presidential run and becoming your own like brand, or the first gentleman. Like I feel like it really it didn't not only equip you to be able to handle dealing with everybody and the campaign logistics, but I feel like you on the campaign trail, you were so likable. Everybody gravitated towards you. Events were packed out when you were speaking. And you also had to deal with, the campaign staff. And I love the title of, the Eat the Nuts chapter of the book. Shout out to, PFA staff and more specifically Chasten staff, because I got to spend a lot of time with them and, was able to get to know them. Oh yeah, it was a lot. And, making the decision, which I'm sure you guys had a long conversation before you made the decision to run, but it was a life change for you too. So before we get into the questions and stuff, I do want to say, you guys making that decision for this country was something that impacted me as well, being a young woman of color from South Bend and having the opportunity to journey through that with you guys. I want to say, thank you for allowing me the space and the opportunity to do so. But I thoroughly enjoyed working with you and doing events with you, because you created a momentum, not only on Twitter, but also on the campaign, where people just loved you so much. So before we go into Q&A, I want you to just briefly talk about, what the campaign meant to you.
Sure.
Being, in that space of, being the ambassador and the surrogate of the campaign, what did that mean for you aside from just being his husband?
Yeah. Oh. Well, first, let me say you can only run a good campaign if you're surrounded by good people. And having you on the team was a treat. Although I don't think you and I should spend a lot of time together because we get each other in trouble. I've got to like be on the trail or laughing too much. And I also really appreciate your kindness in talking about, who I was, but you're an incredible person as well. And I've been thinking about this all day. I don't want to get emotional. But I knew we were going to reflect on the campaign together, and I don't want it to go, without being said. You are a force. You're incredible, and our campaign was built on a foundation of just brilliant, talented people. And something that really pissed me off was that your voice continuously was erased in the coverage of the campaign and the brilliant people of color who worked on our campaign. And I thought it would be unfair of you to sit down with me tonight and, build me up without returning the favor. And I got to go out there and do these cool things and write a book and spread that belonging. But I didn't do that alone. I did it surrounded by people like you, people who believed in the message that we built. And so thank you for seeing that in me. But also, I'm so sorry for, how people erased you. Because sometimes I feel like I got built up so much, and it's just unfair that's what happened. And luckily for you and I, we still get to be friends.
Yeah.
And luckily for Indiana and South Bend, you're still there. The campaign left, or the campaign's done. The national press left South Bend, and South Bend's still there. And South Bend is still South Bend. And South Bend will not be the place that we all want it to be unless it is full of people like you who are committed to making it better. So there, we can drink about that later. What were we talking about? What the campaign meant. I was a suicidal 17-year-old sitting in my dad's basement thinking that I was going to lose everything because of who I was. Because the thing inside me that told me I was twisted and broken and unworthy of love and dignity. And sometimes I wonder why I'm still here. But then here I am. And for everything that, gets thrown at you in a national campaign, when one kid comes up to you and says, "You saved my life," it's worth it.
Oh,
and then when thousands of kids come up to you and say that, when every single day someone is squeezing you or whispering into your ear, I finally came out, or, I'm not quite there yet, but watching you and Peter gives me so much hope and courage when people grasp your hands and look you in the eye and say, "This is what this campaign means to me." It doesn't matter that we lost. To me, I thought Peter would be a great president, but when people share that with you, you've done some good. And that is what meant the most to me, that I got to go out there and somehow be a person I wish I would have had when I was that 17-year-old kid sitting in my basement feeling so alone. That this campaign really did, crack that rainbow ceiling a little bit. And it really did push the needle, and that's enough. That's completely enough for me. Yeah.
It was beautiful, and I'm honored to have been a part of it, and to have a front seat and a back seat on the whole process. So thank you, one, for acknowledging my role, and also how difficult it was for our Black staff and staff of color that were navigating through it. But we believed so much in not only Pete but in you too, in the process, and you guys created something so beautiful. And I know that everybody who's watching is just as excited for the future of what is to come. Speaking of the future, there are a couple of questions about whether or not you are ever going to get back into the classroom. How do you see yourself as being an educator in the future, or what do you envision that to be like? Because I think we all know that you loved it. My daughter Madison almost had you as her teacher.
No.
I know.
Oh.
So, yeah, we want to know more. Do you see yourself getting back into the classroom? What is that going to look like for you?
Yeah.
What do you have planned?
Yeah, I mean, in the interim, I'm a fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School this fall, which is intimidating and exciting. So I'm sort of back in the virtual classroom and excited to share a very different viewpoint on politics with students. I love being in the classroom. I would love to continue showing up for kids. And luckily, I have just a little bit of time to figure that out. But absolutely, it is the place where I feel truly alive. Like I know exactly why I'm there. And I go to bed every night, even though, the parents can be rough and the kids can be rough and the testing, it can all just feel so crushing, but you go to bed knowing you're doing the right thing. So I would love to find a way to get back in the classroom or at least be helpful. But yeah, I just can't leave education.
Yeah. And I love the fact that when we were on the trail, you talked so much about education, and we sat at round tables with different teachers and educators, and getting to know them on a different level. One of the other questions that we have was, one of the questions that I myself had in the beginning of your book, you put on here for Wanda.
Oh, yeah.
Folks want to know, who is Wanda, and are you willing to share a little bit about who this book is dedicated to?
It's funny, you go through so many drafts and you have so many people reading it and checking for errors and legal and everything. And I didn't catch that I never explained who Wanda was. Wanda's my grandmother. She's the grandmother that I mentioned in the chapter about coming out. So when you get to that part in the book, you'll see why she meant so much to me.
I actually highlighted that whole part of the book because it was so impactful. So when you guys buy the book, which you better buy the book, you'll be able to read that part of what she said to Chasten and why it was so important, and why I now understand why it was dedicated to her. So we have time for a few more questions. Oh, this is fun. And I know Kathy and I, before we all got together, we talked about you writing more books.
Oh my God.
So, folks, now, since you have one book under your belt, I know they want to know, do you plan on writing any more books? Have you considered writing children's books? Is what folks want to know. I
have considered, yes, absolutely. I would love to. I don't know if that opportunity is there or not, but I have always thought about writing a children's book about Buddy and Truman.
Gosh, yes, that would be so cute.
Yeah, that would be fun. Buddy keeps circling the. I don't know if you can hear him shaking his collar. It's like, is everyone aware that I'm here, Buddy?
Oh yeah.
Oh, he needs some attention. Do you want to say hi to Arielle? Come here. A special appearance.
Yes. Hi, Buddy.
I think Buddy would make a great character for a children's book.
Absolutely. I think so. I mean, they already have their own Twitter.
Which they do on their own,
Everybody loves them on Instagram. And everywhere we went, we got a question about them. Like, I don't think that there was ever not a question about Buddy and Truman while we were on the trail.
Yeah.
Like, everybody wanted to know about them.
Well, we love them.
Yeah. So, last question before, let's see, what else do we have? Oh my goodness. Letty, our good friend Letty, she wants to know, who tattled to Pete about you not eating the Cliff Bars?
I would love to know. For those of you who haven't read the book, there's a whole section on eating on the trail. That was also a scary realization. I was losing way too much weight, way too fast, which you would love to say, right, when you need to lose weight, but like in a very unhealthy way. It was like just anxiety, depression, and coffee. And someone told Pete that I wasn't eating the nuts or the Cliff Bars. And I felt bad because I made it known that I didn't like Cliff Bars, which I also
I
made.
don't like them either.
They're candy bars. I'm sorry,
Not
the Cliff Bars, but they're candy bars. So my thing was like, if you're gonna feed me candy for lunch, can I just have candy? Because they're like 30 grams of sugar in those things. So like, just there's protein in peanut butter. Can I have a Reese's? You know, it was like
See,
all.
that would have been better. You would have said yes to that.
Oh, hands down, hands down.
All right, last question before we wrap up, which I think is one that I want to know too. What is a book that you would recommend that is not yours or your husband's, that you may have read or that you are enjoying right now, or that you picked up during, quarantine? Any book recommendations out there?
I wish I'm in Michigan and my library, since I would go grab a handful. The one that has me like cackling, laugh out loud, laughing is Eric Thomas's Here for It.
I just ordered it.
It's so funny. And he wrote a really nice piece about me and Elle, and I feel like I just need to be friends with him, because when I'm reading it, it's like I have to be friends with him. Like this comedy.
It was because of that interview that I went and ordered his book.
No joke.
Yes.
That's really good. Eric Cervini wrote a really interesting LGBTQ history book. Pete Buttigieg, I'm just kidding. To be honest, I'm tired. When I cranked that book out, I was like, I can't read a thing. I can't write a thing. I can't read a thing. But I'm slowly starting to get back into it, because the stack is just getting higher and higher.
I know.
Kathy knows that well.
Oh yeah, I'm sure she does, and she's gonna come back on this.
If I could make this work.
Ooh.
No one's on the screen. Sorry about that. I'm just trying to get YouTube back. I do not know how I did that at all. Okay, and then one more.
Boom.
Yes, I did it. Woo-hoo. I just have to say thank you. That was so amazing. And I don't say this lightly, because I don't like to exaggerate or help people. But that was so amazing. Seriously, I laughed, I cried. I cannot thank the two of you enough for giving us this joy tonight. So thank you. Speaking of reading, I got to tell you, same way right now. Not that I wrote a book, but this pandemic has my brain so scrambled. I can only read what I have to read. It's hard to read anything else. Luckily, I had to read your book, so I did. That was good. But there's a lot of good books out this year. I'm super excited about that. But mostly, I just want people to take care of themselves. If that means watching television, watching television. If that means watching a movie. Hug your friends. I mean, buy your books from me, yes, but you don't have to read them. I'm okay with that.
Seriously.
But truly, thank you so much.
It's so hard out there right now, especially for the independent books. And it would mean a lot to me if folks are watching it tonight. If you haven't purchased the book, if you would please purchase it through Kathy's store. Please don't purchase it from that big site that we won't name. People need a discount. People need a break sometimes. But if you can afford to buy it through Kathy's store, please. She's a phenomenal beacon of hope in South Bend. Thank you for creating that safe space, Kathy. And we're all here for you in South Bend. So everyone buy 20.
And I do have a few book plates left.
Now.
Yes, buy 20. We have some book plates left. There's a little button down there. Make sure you use it. That's okay. But like Chasten said, though, I do have a small discount listed on there. And the library has some copies. There's audiobooks, and the library also has audiobooks. I just think you should read this book. And if you've read the book, pass it on to somebody else so they could read it too. I feel like right now in this time we're in, we need as much joy and hope that we can get. And again, I just want to say thank you. But before you guys leave, on Monday, I have my next virtual event with Paula Chase and Renee Watson, and we're also talking about hope. My 4 events that I've scheduled for this month are all about how we can achieve some kind of joy in our life, however small, big, whatever, but we could do that, and just each one is about hope. So thank you. Have a wonderful evening. I do appreciate you both.
Bye, y'all.